This lecture discusses biomes, the characteristics of microclimates, and the process of ecological succession. There are two main terms that you should know related to ecology before we proceed. The first is ecosystem. This is a biological system of interdependent organisms, and these organisms all live in one specific region. An ecotone is a region of transition between two different ecosystems. So in this picture, we see a mountain and there's a forest on the bottom part of the mountain, and the top it's very rocky and rugged. And then in between, you see this transition between the two very distinct ecosystems, and that's called the ecotone. So ecotone is that region of transition. According to NASA's Earth Observing System, there are 7 different terrestrial or land-based biomes on Earth. And these are categorized primarily based on their climate, which is their rainfall and temperature. Some ecologists include more categories by including aquatic systems in the list of biomes and/or by differentiating forest or grassland biomes. So the number of biomes can vary depending on the source that you're looking at. And indeed, in this course, we will look at other sources which may count them differently and have up to 12 different terrestrial biomes. Sometimes you will find unique areas within a biome that allow for microclimates. So these are specialized conditions in a small area of the biome. And in the picture in the slide, we see a river flowing through a canyon in the desert. And so the area right around the river is going to have a different microclimate and miniature biome where you'll see different plants and animals from the rest of the biome. So it doesn't have to be a creek in a desert. Other factors that might account for biome variability would be areas that have different soil types, which lead to different vegetation, areas with different slopes. So on a side of a mountain, it might be different than the valley below, partially because of the slope of the land, which affects soil. And then regions that you might have a microclimate in an area that's shadowed, like on the lee side of a mountain where the sun doesn't hit, you might have a microclimate that's different from the surrounding area. We often think of places like Hawaii as just tropical and rainforest, but the big island of Hawaii, actually has many different microclimates, and that's because it has a lot of change in elevation. So as you go up that tall mountain of Mauna Kea, you encounter different biomes. And also this island has a rain shadow effect. So one side of the island is very dry and the other side is very moist, and that leads to different microclimates on the island. As you may know, we have a lot of forest fires in Arizona and in much of the western United States, and these are classic examples of disturbances. When a disturbance takes place in an ecosystem, such as a wildfire or a volcanic eruption that can cover existing vegetation and soils with ash or lava, or even when humans clear-cut land, an ecosystem can come back to its previous condition, but only if it's not damaged too badly. So if it can return, then this is a resilient ecosystem. Ecological succession describes this process, which demonstrates how biomes can change over time due to succession until they reach an equilibrium state again. These ecosystems go through this process in 2 stages. Primary succession is the process by which soils regenerate. So moss begins to grow on bare rock surfaces. It helps to weather the rocks, break them down, and over time, the soil can regenerate. Secondary succession occurs after primary succession or in a region where the soils are still intact. And in this case, grasses begin to grow back, followed by trees, and starting with the softer wood trees and then followed by hardwood trees. And then finally, once plants and trees begin to grow back, animals return once they have a habitat and a food source to return to. So this diagram shows how secondary succession occurs in a forest biome. And so as we discussed, you start with the annual plants growing in the soil, and then perennial plants and grasses come in, then shrubs, then the softer pine trees come in, and then finally hardwood trees come in. And actually, as you progress, the forest hardwood tree ecosystem is not as diverse as that kind of intermediate system where sunlight can still penetrate through the tree canopy and reach plants down below on the soil surface. So often areas will experience cycles of wildfire, and that can actually help increase biodiversity in forests.